Sorry. Vishavahai. Nejasvinavaditamastu mavid Vishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Sadaशिवसमारम्भं शङ्कराचार्यमध्यमम् अस्मदाचार्यपर्यन्तं वन्दे गुरुपरम्परां वन्दे गुरुपरम्पराम् नारायणं नमस्कृत्य नरं चैव नरोत्तमं देवीं सरस्वतीं व्यासं ततो जयमुदीरयेत्। हरि ओम्. Not many people are not here. I will start reading 54. Arjuna Uvacha Chittaprajnasya ka bhasha samadhistasya Keshava tiditadihi kim prabhasita kim masita vrajeta kim. Arjuna said, O Keshava, what is the description of a person of a firm wisdom, one whose mind abides in the Atma, self? How does such a person, whose mind is not shaken by anything, speak, sit, and walk? So, read from the last part of this question. The spirit of Arjuna's question. The spirit of Arjuna's question. When Lord Krishna answered Arjuna, he did not answer his question. Instead, he answered the person, as we will see. If he had answered the question, what could he have said? Would he have described a Siddha Prajna as one who walks very slowly or quickly? Because the person is a Siddha Prajna. Suppose the Siddha Prajna does not have any legs, or would Krishna have said that Siddha Prajna talks very slowly because he or she is very alert, or that being very alert, the Siddha Prajna's words are carefully measured and come only in half-minute intervals, the person being so rooted in the self? What does all this mean? How does it make any difference? Some people think that if you talk very slowly, you are wonderful. They think that the words of a wise person who talks slowly come from infinity and therefore they take time. They come from such depths, it seems. People can be very easily fooled by those who pose as wise by saying very little and speaking very leisurely. There is yet another popular description of a wise person. Words just tumble out. The physical organ is incapable of the physical organ is incapable of keeping track of the pace of the quicksilver mind of the wise. It is so mercurial. No god has made an organ of speech that can keep pace with it. Mm. The person has such enormous energy. And then there is another type of wise person, it seems, who, having reached Atma, does not talk at all. He or she is always in samadhi. People come and the person just looks at them without even blinking. Why? Because he or she is Siddha Prajna, one of a steady wisdom. Thus, we see that if Arjuna's question had been taken literally, no answer would have been possible unless Krishna himself believed in such definitions of a wise person. Therefore, the second line of Arjuna's question did not mean anything to Krishna, but there was a spirit to it. That is, how does a wise person interact with the world? How does he or she talk and go about in the world? Is there any indication that this person has wisdom? Is there anything that betrays or reveals the wisdom he or she has? Will there be any difference in how this person interacts with the world and how an ordinary person interacts? There should be some difference. Therefore, what is it that characterizes the person's wisdom? This was the spirit of Arjuna's question, and it was this question that was answered in the verses to come. So, this was done yesterday. Go on to this verse 55. श्रीभगवानुवाच प्रज प्रजहाति यदा कामान् सर्वान् पार्थमनुगतान् आत्मनेव आत्मान तुष्टः चितप्रज्ञस्तदोच्यते चितप्रज्ञस्तदोच्यते. Sri Bhagavan, the Lord, Uvach said, Partha, O Partha, Yada, when, Sarvan, all, Manogatan, as they appear in the mind, common desires, Prajahati gives up, Prajahati gives up, Atmani in oneself, Eva alone, Atmana with oneself. Tushtaha, one who is happy. Tada, then, Chitaprajnaha, a person of ascertained knowledge, Uchyate, is said to be. Sri Bhagavan Uvacha, Partha Yada Sarvan Manogatan Kaman Prajahati Atmani Eva Atmana Tushtaha. Tada Chitaprajnaha Uchyate. Excuse me. Sri Bhagavan said, when a person gives up all the desires as they appear in the mind, O Partha, happy in oneself, with oneself alone, the person is said to be one of ascertained knowledge. I'll read this again. Sri Bhagavan said, when a person gives up all the desires as they appear in the mind, O Partha, happy in oneself, with oneself alone, that person is said to be one of such ascertained knowledge. The characteristics stated here and in the subsequent verses of the chapter are with the reference to a person who has already attained this knowledge. Both the definition, lakshana, of a wise person, Siddha Prajna, and the means for becoming wise, the sadhana, are discussed. Although Arjuna only wanted to know who is the Siddha Prajna, the sadhana is also taught because throughout the Shastra, the characteristics of a wise person are said to also be the means of for preparing one's mind for the knowledge of the Atma. In his commentary, Shankara referred to a Chitta Prajna as one who is accomplished, one who has made it, a Kritartha, 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 Kritartha. The characteristics of one who has made it by gaining this knowledge become the sadhana, the means for gaining the knowledge. Thus, the wise person's spontaneous expressions in life, the attitudes and disposition with which he or she interacts with others, are the characteristics that establish the norms to be followed by the seekers of this wisdom. I'll read this last line. Thus, the wise person's spontaneous expressions in life, the attitudes and disposition with which he or she interacts with others, are, are the characteristics that establish the norms to be followed by the seekers of this wisdom. The definition is also the means. These characteristics are to be cultivated because they are the means by which the seeker becomes a wise person. Without these sadhanas, a person does not become wise. Thus, in the beginning, there is a sadhana, and then later, the sadhana becomes an expression. Sympathy, love, freedom, giving, and so on are all sadhanas in the beginning. They are means for self purification and maturity, eventually becoming the natural expressions of the same person. It is not that the person tries to be sympathetic, loving, and giving. He or she is naturally sympathetic, loving, and giving. However, for the person who has not yet made it, he or she tries, for example, to give. This is necessary because, along with the giving thought, there is also the opposite thought in the form of the reluctance to give. In the mind of the person, the question, why should I give, still arises. If the ego is there telling me not to give, then I am not a giving person. Thus, giving, love, sympathy, consideration, and so on, all of which are the spontaneous expressions of a wise person, become the sadhanas for the person who wants to be the wise, who want to be wise, the mumukshu. The sadhanas itself is to be accomplished by effort, yatna. If you succeed in acquiring these characteristics, then you become firmly established in the knowledge. You gain jnana nishta. What was accomplished with effort becomes the natural expression of the wise person. That is the rule. Therefore, all the universal values being natural to the Siddha Prajna are the sadhanas for a mumukshu. They became natural to Chitta Prajna because they are natural expression of oneself. But in the beginning, the person deliberately cultivated them. To become wise, you have to follow them. Only then can you gain jnana nishta. Thus, these values are both the qualifications and the qualities you need for the knowledge to take place. And in time, they become very natural to you. The qualities represented by, yeah, Sorry. You guys need anything to be repeated? Yeah. The qualities represented by universal values are not like a boat that you use to cross the river and then leave behind once you have reached the other side. Even though these qualities are the means for preparing your antakarana for the knowledge, they become natural expressions because you continue to be a person with such mind, with such a mind. You interact with the world as before, but now you interact spontaneously because these qualities have become natural to you. Thus, in the beginning, they are in the form of sadhanas, the means for accomplishing self knowledge, whereas later they are like ornaments, very natural, spontaneous expressions of the person. Bhagavan Krishna included both the definition of a wise person and the means for becoming wise in his response to Arjuna's request for a description of Siddha because they are one and the same thing. Shankara makes the same point in his commentary introducing this verse. Krishna also indicated that giving up all desires, sarvan kaman, does not mean that the Sita Prajna has no desires, but that as they arise in his mind, Manogatan, he gives them up, Prajahati, Praja, Prajahati, Prajahati. Hmm. So he gives up all the desire as they arise in his mind. That's Prajahati. That means the desires are not pursued. In this way, the wise person gives up all desires. That's the first step, giving up all desire as they arise in the mind. Can you be happy if you give up desires? Now, the question may arise, if a man gives up all his desires, does that not mean that he will have no happiness? Ananda, we know that a man is happy only when he fulfills a desire, but here he gives up all desires as they arise in his mind and at the same time continues to live. If all his desires disappear and he disappears with them, there is no problem. But if he gives up all desires and continues to exist in this world, it seems that he has no way of being happy. What recourse does he have except to become high on drugs or a madman who is always laughing at nothing? In order to answer this question, we have to take two things into consideration. First, people are not happy, and secondly, people are always busy fulfilling their desires in order to be happy. They are always hopeful that happiness will come because they do become happy occasionally. Tomorrow will be better, they say. Everything will be wonderful when this is over. It seems, therefore, that people who pursue their desires are always working for happiness, whereas those who have given up all desires have no way of being happy, and no one can remain for a long period without being happy. Bhagavan corrected this train of thinking by saying that such a person is happy with himself or herself. Atmani eva atmana tushtaha. In himself or herself, the wise person is happy. Everyone is happy in himself or herself anyway, but always because of something else. Here, without any external props or circumstances, without expecting or depending on sorry, depending upon any condition whatsoever, the person is happy. So again, here, without any external props or circumstances, without expecting, depending upon any condition whatsoever, the person is happy. So the person is happy himself or herself. The analogy of sugar crystal is useful here. Simply by using being a sugar crystal is sweet. It does not require a sweetening agent to be sweet because it is already saturated with the sweetness. That is why it is sugar crystal. Therefore, it cannot be sweetened further. Similarly, one who is happy, tushta, tushta, does not depend on any other object or situation to be happy. Like sugar crystal, one who is happy to stop does not depend on any other object or situation to be happy because he's already happy. By one's own awakening to oneself alone, one is happy. So by one's own awakening to oneself alone, one is happy. Such a person is called Chitta Prajna. Shankara explains here that Chitta, Chitta, Chitta means well established, and Prajna is that knowledge which is born of Viveka. Prajna is knowledge which is born of Viveka, the discriminative inquiry into and analysis of Atma and Anatma. Mm. Therefore, the one for whom this knowledge is well established is called a Sthita Prajna or a Vidwan, a wise person. So, therefore, the one for whom this knowledge is well established is called Sthita Prajna or Vidwan, a wise person. Arjuna wanted to know what Sthita Prajna was, and this was Krishna's definition. It is an excellent and complete definition. Sthita Prajna, Krishna said, is one who, being awake to the fact of the Atma, being happy for no other reason, gives up all desires that arise in his or her mind. Complete definition. So I'll read that line one more time. The Siddha Prajna, Krishna said, is the one who, being awake to the fact of the Atma, being happy for no other reason, gives up all desires that arise his or her mind. The difference between binding and non-binding desires. Desires, kamas, are divided into two types, ragas and dveshas. Raga dveshas are being nothing but desire. The common word for both of them is kama. I want is kama. I want such and such can be either something you want to acquire or protect or something that you want to avoid or get rid of. So it could be what you want to acquire, protect, something that you want to avoid or get rid of. Yeah, either way, it is a comma. I want. This want can be in the form of raga or dvesha, depending on whether you want to acquire something or get rid of something. Raga dveshas are also of two types, binding and non-binding. Whenever the Shastra talks about karma in the form of raga or dvesha, it is referring only to those that are binding. When a person gives up all karmas as they arise in the mind, he or she does so for a reason. Otherwise, giving them up is not possible. That a man who gives up all the desires in his mind and one who is happy in himself is called a wise man, Chitta Prajna, seems to mean that the first condition is a necessity for the second condition. Thus, in order to be happy with oneself, in order to be happy with oneself, one has to give up all desires. How is that possible? Unless you are happy with yourself, how can you give up all desires? Hmm. Because you're already full, so you don't need any desires. Looks like if in order to give up all desires, you have to be happy with yourself, and in order to be happy with yourself, you have to give up all desires. Like cash 22, you are in an unenviable, yeah, you are in an unenviable position. It is something like a mentally unbalanced man who is advised that unless he marries, he will not be cured. In other words, the diagnosis and treatment are one, because no father will give his daughter in marriage to a madman. He will not be able to marry. Unless he marries, he cannot be mentally well. He seemed to have the same situation here. But do we? According to some modern translations, it may look that way, but not according to Shankara. Non binding desires are not the problem. First, Shankara created a problem by saying that a person who gives up all his desires is like a madman. Otherwise, how can he be happy? Then he said, a man who is happy in himself by his own awakening to himself does not need any desire to be fulfilled in order to be happy. What desires are being referred to here? Only those desires whose fulfillment is meant to make me happy, and not those that are non binding in nature for me. Non binding desires may include a desire to do, a desire to write, a desire to teach, a desire to give, a desire to just simply stay put, and so on. Non binding desires are not being considered here, only binding desires. If a wise person is one who gives up all desires, where does that leave Shankara, who wrote the commentary on giving up desires? Was he a wise man? Was Krishna, who taught Arjuna, a wise man? Was Vyasa, who wrote the Mahabharata in which the Gita appears, a wise man? If only those who have given up all desires are wise, none of these men can be desired to have been wise. Krishna seemed to have desired to teach. Krishna all but pounced on Arjuna. He did not even mind that he was in the midst of battlefield. Krishna's knowledge seems to have been bottled up inside him, and it came pouring out for Arjuna's asking in one long continuous flow. Aside from his desire to teach, Krishna seemed to have some other desires too. For example, when he was asked to drive Arjuna's chariot, he agreed. Had Krishna given up every desire that arose in his mind, he could not have driven the chariot. But he did drive it. He also took up the flute and played a lot of songs. If this desire had been given up, all the gopis would be still, waiting to hear his music, and he would be still sitting with his flute poised. He would not have even had a desire to remove his hands from the flute. Since Krishna presented himself as one who performed various actions, since doing presupposes desire, he could not have been a Chittaprajna by his own definition. Vyasa also must have had a lot of desires to have written this great magnum opus, this huge work called the Mahabharata. To have kept on writing as he did, Vyasa must have had a very special mind indeed, and a lot of desires as well. People often have the desire to accomplish some enormous project or the other, but then after a while, why they give it up. They begin it but do not complete it. Not Vyasa. He began and finished every chapter. Thus, according to the definition, he could not have been a jnani. He would not have been a jnani. In fact, no teacher can be a jnani. Thus, they must all be jnanis. If the desire is not there, a wise person cannot teach, which means that only the otherwise can teach, but they have nothing to teach. Unfortunately, the explanation put forward in some modern commentaries of the Gita based on incorrect translations have created a lot of problems in understanding what is meant by giving up all desires. If this were not the case, there would be no misunderstanding because what was said originally by Krishna is very clear. When you are everything, what is there to be done? When you are everything, what is there to be done? As Krishna told Arjuna in the third chapter, a wise person is not bound by his or her desires and is not subject to any kind of mandate. Desires are only binding if you take yourself to be a karta, a doer. Only then do you have things to do. Only then can there be dereliction of a duty, dereliction of duty. If, on the other hand, you do not look upon yourself as a karta and are awake to the knowledge of yourself, there is no question of self being a doer. Therefore, there is no doership and nothing to be done. Lord Krishna told Arjuna that because he had no desires, Lord Krishna told Arjuna that because he had no desires, he had nothing to do. Because Krishna is everything and everything is himself. What is there to be accomplished? Nevertheless, he was always active, meaning that all the activities he performed were non binding. If activities are non binding, the prompting factor of activity, karma, must also be non binding. There, here in the Gita, non binding karma is not the topic, only binding karma is discussed. The placement of the words when yada, then tada in this verse is also significant. The word then comes much later until it comes. Then comes much later until it comes. The force of the word when continues. When a man gives up all desires as they arise and being happy with himself in himself, only then can he be called Yastita Prajna. The force of when is the same for both conditions when he gives up all desires and when he is happy with himself, in himself, depending on nothing for his happiness. So, when he is happy with himself, in himself, depending on nothing for his happiness. Therefore, one gives up all desires arising in one's mind that are binding in nature, the desires to be secure, to be happy, to be somebody, and so on. So, let me read this line again. Therefore, one gives up all desires arising in one's mind that are binding in nature, the desire to be secure, to be happy, to be somebody, and so on. A person who is secure with himself or herself gives up such desires naturally. The word tushta in the verse does not
ఎందుకు
merely
ఎందుకు నువ్వే ఇట్లా ఇచ్చేసావు ఎందుకు చేస్తావే నాకు పడుకున్నారు కదా అందరూ తల తెరిచింది కదా చేయకలాగా చూడాలి కదా ఫస్ట్ పడుకున్న వాళ్ళందరినీ లేపడానికి
the word to stir in the verse does not merely mean happiness. It implies security also. The insecure cannot be to stir happy. Therefore, one who is secure is also happy. Therefore, one who is secure is also happy. And giving up all desires is possible only when one is happy with oneself. Thus, the definition of Chitta Prajna is complete. What else can be said? One who is happy with oneself is a wise person who can totally accept himself or herself because the self is acceptable. The self is perfect, it is not imperfect. What else? Sorry, let me repeat this again. What else can be said? One who is happy with oneself is is a wise person who can totally accept himself or herself because the self is acceptable. The self is perfect. It is not imperfect. Perfection means that there is no sense of imperfection whatsoever. The self is free from any sense of imperfection, and the whole creation, the whole world, the universe is not separate from the self. Because the self is complete, Purna, it cannot be improved upon. Just as the sweetness of sugar cannot be improved upon, so too the fullness of the Atma cannot be improved upon. Being awake to the fact the person is happy. To be wise, you must have wisdom. This then is the Lakshana, the definition of a wise person. To be wise requires wisdom, nothing else. How a wise person walks, talks, and sits means nothing. Anyone can learn to walk in a certain way. And if the definition of a wise person is that he or she talks slowly, then everyone who talks slowly would be a jnani. The speed at which one talks or how one walks means nothing. Okay, the speed at which one talks and how one walks means nothing. Wisdom alone makes one wise. Just as being friendly is the only way to make friends, there is no other way. Similarly, some people ask how they can develop love. All that is to be done is to love. What else can you do? You cannot discover love outside of love itself. If you want to discover more love, be loving. Create conditions that will help you discover love, conditions that are not inimical to the discovery of love. People often create certain conditions in themselves, knowingly or unknowingly, that are inimical to the discovery of love. If you avoid doing this, you will find that you are loving. So good. Love is a manifestation of one's fullness. Love is nothing but the expressed form of fullness, ananda. And just as wheat flour takes on names, just such as bread, rolls, and muffins, so too love is subject to various forms. The different names given to wheat represent modifications of the wheat. Similarly, love is a simple emotion which is a modification or manifestation of ananda. If you analyze love, you will find nothing but ananda. The manifest form of ananda is love, and love itself turns into such natural qualities as sympathy, compassion, giving, and depending upon the situation. And when that same love is distorted in any way, it becomes karma, leading to negative emotions such as greed, anger, depression, and so on. All of this then are nothing but one expression of Ananda, love. This is why we say love is Bhagavan, meaning that the expressed form of Ananda is Bhagavan. So nice. And what is Bhagavan? The essential form of Bhagavan is Satchit Ananda. And the express form of Ananda, Ishvara, the Lord, is love. The modifications of this love can be either positive or negative. Sympathy and compassion are examples of the positive modifications of love, whereas negative modifications are anger, greed, jealousy, and so on. All that is there is one Ananda, expressed or unexpressed. Unexpressed, it is the Swarupa, the very nature of fullness, which is the definition of Ananda. Expressed, it becomes love, prema. We shall see more of this definition later. Here, the Sthita Prajna is one who discovers the Ananda in himself or herself and knows that there is nothing other than oneself. When one says, I am the whole, it means that the person is himself or herself, the fulfillment of all desires. We shall see as we proceed how the discovery of oneself and the fulfillment of all desires are not separate but identical. So, so nice, right? This last paragraph. Shall I read it one more time? Love is a manifestation of one's fullness.
Yes, please. Yes, yeah, Dr.
Okay.
If you can read a little before that also.
Okay, sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, because this is a full. It's really like okay. So, do you want me to go back to be wise? You must have wisdom, or okay, I'll go from here. When you're everything, what is there to be done? As Krishna told Arjuna in the third chapter, a wise person is not bound by his or her desires and is not subject to any kind of mandate. Desires are only binding if you take yourself to be a karta, a doer. Only then do you have things to do. Only then can there be dereliction of duty. If, on the other hand, you do not look upon yourself as a karta and are awake to the knowledge of yourself, there is no question of self being a doer. Therefore, there is no doership, nothing to be done. Lord Krishna told Arjuna that because he had no desires, he had nothing to do. Because Krishna is everything and everything is himself, what is there to be accomplished? Nevertheless, he was always active, meaning that all the activities he performed were non binding. If activities are non binding, the prompting factor of activity, karma, must also be non binding. Here in the Gita, non binding karma is not the topic, only binding karma is discussed. So, the thing that we need to give up is the binding desires that arise in the mind. The placement of the words when yada and then tada in this verse is also significant. The word then becomes much later, and until it comes, the force of the word when continues. When a man gives up all desires as they arise and being happy with himself in himself, Only then can he be called a Sthitaprajna. The force of one is the same for both conditions when he gives up all desires and when he is happy with himself, in himself, depending on nothing for his happiness. Therefore, one gives up all desires arising in one's mind that are binding in nature, the desires to be secure, to be happy, to be somebody, and so on. This is that karma that we normally have, right? A person who is secure with himself or herself gives up such desires naturally. The word tushta, tush, tushta in the verse does not merely mean happiness, it implies security also. The insecure cannot be tushta, happy. Therefore, one who is secure is also happy, and giving up all desires is possible only when one is happy with oneself. Thus, the definition of Chitta Prajna is complete. What else can be said when then one is happy with oneself is a wise person who can totally accept himself or herself because the self is acceptable. The self is perfect. It is not imperfect. Perfection means that there is no sense of imperfection whatsoever. The self is free from any sense of imperfection, and the whole creation, the whole world, the universe is non separate from the self. Because the self is complete, Purna. It cannot be improved upon. Just as the sweetness of sugar cannot be improved upon, so too the fullness of the Atma cannot be improved upon. Being awake to that fact, the person is happy. So this is about when you're everything, there's not much to be done. To be wise, you must have wisdom. This is then is the lakshana, the definition of a wise person. To be wise requires wisdom, nothing else. How a wise person walks, talks, and sits means nothing. Anyone can learn to walk in a certain way. And if the definition of a wise person is that he or she talks slowly, then everyone who talks slowly would be a jnani. The speed at which one talks or how one walks means nothing. Wisdom alone makes one wise. Just as being friendly is the only way to make friends, there is no other way. Similarly, some people ask how they can develop love. All that is to be done is to love. What else can you do? You cannot discover love outside of love itself. If you want to discover more love, be loving. Create conditions that will help you discover love. Conditions that are not inimical to the discovery of love. People often create certain conditions in themselves, knowingly or unknowingly, that are inimical to the discovery of love. If you avoid doing this, you will find that you are loving.
Yeah, can we just deliberate on this part? These last few sentences about
Yeah,
discovering love.
right. So basically, the first paragraph says what is the lakshana for wise person is the wisdom. So comparing to that, somebody you know have want to love, then they should go on good loving person. You cannot do anything else to make somebody to love or be loving. So sorry, to love. So So you have to discover, like you have to be loving, uh, to be loved, right? Because if you were not, what inimical means, what like pratibandhakas, right? If you create conditions yourself not loving, then that's not going to make you uh, loving or caring person. It will be create otherwise a person who is like hating and everything negative, may negative conditions. So people create certain conditions themselves, knowingly, unknowingly, inimical to discovery of love, meaning like we ourselves create those conditions. Like for example, like you say, oh, I did this for this person, she did not do anything, or you expect something, right? Loving is more of, it comes naturally from your heart. That's what I
I
feel.
think the more the more we feel incomplete,
Right,
the more we
exactly.
feel
Yeah,
limited, and we're
yeah.
looking out to fulfill that by going outwardly, then we are
Materialistic. Yeah.
creating these inimical situations.
Mm,
But the more we feel content and fulfilled and complete within, and we're
right,
not dependent on the other for our happiness, the less dependent we are on the outside, then the more complete you feel and the more full you are.
right. That's
And
what we
then
read in
these,
the previous
yeah,
paragraph, right?
right.
Yeah, you're right. Sorry. Yeah, go ahead. So that creating certain conditions like that, I wasn't sure I know the examples. We ourselves would, why should I do this first? Let them do it first, like that kind of thing, right? Um, that's how it, or when the ego stands out, you know, then also then that love would have be a problem. Like again, the next paragraph where we explain like the ananda, is a form of fullness, where that where the love and compassion, all the sympathy, all this positive uh, qualities comes out. And the same token, the negative ones are like anger, depression, all that other um, things happening. True. When you're incomplete, you're getting. So, if you want to discover more love, be loving. Create conditions that will help you discover love. Conditions that are not inimical to the discovery of the love. So we have to give love, and then so you discover more love. So that's a giving part
Yeah.
is more important.
Rather
Yeah,
than demand love,
receiving it. Yeah, yeah,
rather than demanding it,
yeah.
just
That's
give.
it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Love is a manifestation of one's fullness. Love is nothing but the expressed form of fullness, ananda. But and just as wheat flour takes on names such as bread, rolls, and muffins, so too love is subject to various forms. The different names given to wheat represent modifications of the wheat. Similarly, love is a simple emotion which is a modification or manifestation of ananda. Mm, manifestation of ananda. If you analyze love, you will find nothing but ananda. The manifest form of ananda is love, and love itself turns into such natural qualities as sympathy, compassion, and giving, depending upon the situation. And when that same love is distorted in any way, it becomes karma, leading to negative emotions such as greed, anger, depression, and so on. All of this, then, are nothing but one expression of Ananda, love. This is why we say love is Bhagavan, meaning that the expressed form of Ananda is Bhagavan. Mm,
Can you just read those? Sorry, I'm
mm,
asking you to repeat again.
mm.
Um, yeah, from the beginning here, love is nothing but.
Yeah, that the definition of Bhagavan, what comes to my mind. And anyway, we say like Karunamurti, right? When we talk about God, he's only. Uh, so this is all like so nice when we fitting in that word Ananda. Love is nothing but the express form of fullness, Ananda. So it is the express form of fullness, Ananda. And just as wheat flour takes on names such as bread, rolls, and muffins, so too love is subject to various forms. The different names given to wheat represent modifications of the wheat. Similarly, love is a simple emotion which is a modification or manifestation of Ananda. If you analyze love, you will find nothing but Ananda. The manifest form of Ananda is love, and love itself turns into such natural qualities as sympathy, compassion, and giving, depending upon the situation. And when the same love is distorted in any way, it becomes karma, leading to negative emotions such as greed, anger, depression, and so on. All of these then are nothing but one expression of Ananda, love. This is why we say love is Bhagavan. So all of this, are nothing but one expression of love, sorry, one expression of Ananda, love, that this is why we say love is Bhagavan, meaning that expressed form of Ananda is Bhagavan. So there is this two kind, right? Unmanifested or expressed or unexpressed. Then unexpressed form of Ananda is that Sukshma, like Atma, Swarupa, right? Swarupa of Atma, or nature is Satchitananda. And whereas here the expressed form is represented as the emotion, love, and then go on to these other emotions, positive emotions and negative emotions. And what is Bhagavan? The essential form of Bhagavan is Satchitananda. And the express form of
Um,
Ananda, yeah,
yeah, go ahead.
express form of Ananda, Ishvara, the Lord is love. So the express form of Ananda, Ishvara, the Lord is love. The modifications of this love can be either positive or negative. Sympathy and compassion are examples of positive modifications of love, whereas negative modifications are anger, greed, jealousy, and so on. All that is there is one Ananda, expressed or unexpressed. Unexpressed, it is the Swarupa, the very nature of fullness, which is the definition of Ananda. So here again I'll read this one line. Unexpressed, it is the Swarupa, the very nature of fullness, which is the definition of Ananda. Do you remember in the anyway, I'll finish this line. Expressed, it becomes love, prema. We shall see more of this definition later. In Tattvabodh, Sat is Sat, Chit, Ananda. Now I forgot completely the definition. Here, the Sthita Prajna is the one who discovers the Ananda in himself or herself and knows that there is nothing other than oneself. When one says, I am the whole, it means that the person is himself or herself, the fulfillment of all desires. We shall see as we proceed how the discovery of oneself and the fulfillment of all desires are not separate but identical. So here you're putting all the equation together now. Who discovers the Ananda in himself or herself knows there is nothing other than oneself. So when one says I am the whole, it means that person is himself or herself the fulfillment of all desires. We shall see as we proceed how the discovery of oneself and the fulfillment of all desires are not separate but identical. Wow. Please share your thoughts. Let me quickly see something. One. Uh, this whole this sloka, let me see, talk about this is pretty big. We read a lot in this one. It's almost time, right? So Sri Bhagavan uvacha prajahati yada kaman sarvan partha manogatan atmaneva atmanat tustaha trita prajna tadochyate. Tadochyate. So that's what yada and tada that comes here. Okay. So he says that one who uh, gives up all desires that arise in the mind, one who um, realizes himself that be happy. Is that right? Like something like person of ascertained knowledge. Happy with oneself and oneself alone said to be ascertained knowledge, one who is wise. So we read about what is the definition of Sthita Prajna. Sthita means well established. Prajna means that knowledge born of Viveka, the discriminative from between the Atma and Anatma. So that is the definition. But then he goes on talking about not only the definition of Chitta Prajna, how to become the wise, and also it helps people who seek wisdom or this to attain the self knowledge or moksha. For mumukshu also this is helpful. The sadhana. So that for basic qualities for these people are natural, supposed to be like the sympathy, loving, caring, giving, and all this positive um, qualities, right? And then initially you cultivate them, but then it comes naturally after they established in the knowledge. So that uh, been explained further. Who destroys their yeah, there's this definition, the complete definition was given. uh, One who completely, so what they call the desires, the when they talk about desires, only the binding desires they're talking about here. So when they as they arise in the mind itself, they give up all the desires, one. And the second thing is, where is that? Yeah, he gives up the desires and then is happy with himself or herself.
The aspect of binding is when you think you are the doer,
Uh-huh,
that
right.
becomes a binding desire.
Desire, right.
That becomes a binding action and therefore binding desire. But
Mm-hmm,
the moment you know that you are full, you are everything, there is nothing for you to do,
right.
but you still act like how Vyasa acted. Uh, Krishna, Krishna taught, he drove the chariot. They're
Mm-hmm,
full. They're still acting. It doesn't mean that they're acting out of some uh, binding desire. They're all non-binding
they
desires,
have desires, but they're
unwanted,
not like,
not
yeah,
binding. So
non-binding.
that kartritva is not there.
The
So
doership, right.
that
Yeah,
doership.
that's
That
a
is what we
difference.
have to dilute. That doership
Mm,
needs to be diluted so much that it becomes that it disappears.
mm,
When we're doing karma yoga, that doership is there as a faint doership
mm,
because we're offering everything as a prayer, as a yajna, and we're receiving everything as prasada. So that little bit doership is there. But compared to a miser, that is a kripana, who's so rooted in the samsara, who's so total in that doership, from that
right,
spectrum, from that end of the spectrum to the other end of the spectrum. For a jnani, a sthita prajna, the doership, where the doership is completely annihilated.
right. Yeah.
So
So that is
yeah,
what we were, I mean, as a person, when you think of myself, like, we were all driven by that personally, right? We only be happy when this get done, that get done, or that if I get this or that. So that is like the binding desire. Like we are kind of, um, with that again, for the binding desire, as you added one, the keynote is that the doership. So we are binding to ourselves, and that's a thing that you said to uh, give up. That's what I was wondering when we talk about all this Krishna, Vyasa, and all that. When you say non-binding, what is that difference between this binding and not? They they don't have to be happy just doing this or that, right? They are happy and they have everything themselves.
So they say you should do everything out of
Also, they
love,
are
not
trying to
for
do
love.
it for others. Sorry, go ahead. I didn't mean
Everything should be done out of love, not for love. That's normally we say no. That's what it is. Yes.
to. Right. And you do it with joy.
And like the same wheat is transformed into um, bread roll and croissant and cake and whatever,
Yeah.
which is love, which is unexpressed, turning into the manifestation. Unexpressed love is Sachidananda. When it expresses itself, it is love,
Love.
and that flows also into the positive aspects of
Right.
positive human values. But the same thing, the same bread, same wheat can also get burnt in the process of, say, baking. Supposing it gets burnt or it overcooks, whatever, that
Hmm.
becomes distorted. And
Right.
that becomes anger, jealousy, greed. So it's the same
Negative
aspect,
emotions.
yeah, but it is distorted.
Mhm.
So if it is flowing freely, it's an expression of love,
Yeah.
positive expression of. But when it gets distorted with the binding desire, it gets distorted with the I-ness, the small I, then it becomes all the negative emotions turn. When you
Mhm.
start seeing the other, when you see unit, when there is oneness that you see the other as yourself, then that sympathy, compassion flows. But when you see the other as separate from you, then that comparison comes in. And once that comparison comes in, all the flood of negative emotions come up.
Mm.
Seeing the other as separate.
And also, like you said, when he discovers himself or herself, and he is complete, he feels as I am the
Mm,
whole. Then you nothing else to fulfill, right? I mean,
mm.
they're not. So that sloga that you used to say, Purnamada, Purnamidam, that was the one here, like very nicely explained. I'm trying to find that thing. I couldn't find that paper I used to keep. The Satchit Ananda. Do you remember that, Dr. Brahmara? The Tattva about the definitions for this. I, al-
Which
I
one?
don't know.
Which one,
For
Dr.
Chat,
Mara?
Satkim, like we read in Tattva Bodh, right? There's definition for Sat Chit Ananda.
Yeah. Ananda. You were talking of Ananda. What Ananda is?
Yeah, yeah.
Anandaha Sukhaswarupaha.
Sukha.
Mm.
Right.
Sat kim kalatrayepi tishtaditi sat.
Hmm.
Chit kim um,
Trayeti Krishnati.
jnanas. Yeah. Chit kim is
Hmm.
jnanaswarupaha.
Jnanaswarupa.
And then
Hmm.
Anandakaha Sukhaswarupaha.
Sukaswarupa. Sukaswarupa. Okay. That's what this is, right?
Mm.
Swarupa, that is like very nature of fullness.
Mm.
Sukaswarupa.
Very
Mm.
beautifully described love as a
Yeah, I mean this.
manifestation of
Yeah,
one's.
it's really nice, right? I never thought of love is like expressed like this, and especially it's coming like flow diagram like from Ananda, right? We always
And
thinking separate, like we are still in the doer duality.
yeah,
Yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
um,
Mhm.
I know today we've gone beyond that time.
Yeah, we gone
The
beyond, but yeah.
In the 13th chapter,
Mm.
the whole there is I think about 33 different values that are
Right.
described.
Uh-huh.
Amanitvam, Adambitvam, Ahimsa, Kshantirarjavam.
Right.
All those are nothing but this expressed
So
love,
expressed
expressed
of the
ananda.
right Ananda. Mm.
And
You're
those are
right.
all the lakshanas of of a sthita prajna, which
Mm.
become the tools for a sadak.
Yeah, I think the sloka
Sadakasya,
number 4 or 5. Yeah, seventh,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
Amanitvam, adambitvam,
adambitvam.
ahimsa, shantir, arjavam, upasanam
Acharyopasanam shauriyam
saucham stairyam
स्थैर्यम्
atma
आत्मविनिग्रहः.
vinigraha. Yeah.
And siddhasya lakshanani sadhakasya sadhanani. So these are all the lakshanas of a siddha.
Siddha. Mind.
He's nothing but fully blossomed love and manifestation of love.
Wow. So
That
nice.
becomes our goal. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you so much. I know we went over. I thought I'll stop. I didn't recognize this as a 50. I thought it was 53 slogan. I mean, I remember yesterday Sumaji read this, and then I was thinking, we didn't do Manana, we should do it. But then I thought we had to read it again, such a long one, but it's worth it reading it again. And thanks for extra time today. We went over 15, 16 minutes. Anyone else, please share your thoughts. Shall I close here, Dr. Pramara?
Yeah, please, please.
Okay. Om Loka Samasta Sukhino Bhavantu. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om Tat Sat Sarvam Krishna Pranamastu. Hari Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Hari Om. Jai Gurudev. Are you going to screen anything?
Do you want me to play the meditation?
Sadhana Panchagam or whichever one.
Yeah, I will do the Sadhana Panchakam.
Okay, good.
साधनपैचकं वेदो नित्यमधीयतां तदुदितं कर्मस्वनुष्ठीयतां तेनेशस्य विधीयतामपचितिः काम्ये मतिस्त्यज्यतां पापौघः परिधूयतां भवसुखे दोषोऽनुसन्धीयतां मात्मेच्छाव्यवसीयतां निजगृहात् तूर्णं विनिर्गम्यताम् सङ्गत्सत्सु विधीयतां भगवतो भक्तिर्दृढाधीयतां शान्त्यादिः परिचीयतां दृढतरं कर्माशु सन्त्यज्यताम् सद्विद्वानुपसृप्यतां प्रतिदिनं तत्पादुकासेव्यतां ब्रह्मैकाक्षरमर्थ्यतां श्रुतिशिरो वाक्यं समाकर्ण्यताम् वाक्यार्थश्च विचार्यतां श्रुतिशिरः पक्षः समाश्रीयतां दुस्तर्कात्सु विरम्यतां श्रुतिमतस्तर्कोऽनुसन्धीयताम् ब्रह्मास्मीति विभाव्यतामहरहर् गर्वः परित्यज्यताम् देहेऽहं मतिरुज्झ्यतां बुधजनैर्वादः परित्यज्यताम् क्षुद्व्याधिश्च चिकित्स्यतां प्रतिदिनं भिक्षौषधं भुज्यतां स्वाद्वन्नन्न तु याच्यतां विधिवशात् प्राप्तेन सन्तुष्यतां शीतोष्णादिविषह्यतां न तु वृथा वाक्यं समुच्चार्यतां मौदासीन्यमभीप्स्यतां जनकृपा नैष्ठुर्यमुत्सृज्यताम् एकान्ते सुखमास्यतां परतरे चेतः समाधीयताम् पूर्णात्मा सुसमीक्ष्यतां जगदिदं तद्बाधितं दृश्यताम् प्राक्कर्म प्रविलाप्यतां चितबलान्नाप्युत्तरैश्लिष्यताम् प्रारब्ध्वं त्विह भुज्यतामथ परब्रह्मात्मना स्थीयताम् यश्लोकपञ्चकमिदं पठते मनुष्यः संचिन्तयत्यनुदिनं स्थिरतमुपेत्य तस्याशु संसृतिदवानलतीव्रघोरः तापः प्रशान्तिमुपयाति चितिप्रसादात् इति श्रीपरमहंसपरिव्राजकाचार्य श्रीमच्छङ्कराचार्य विरचित साधनपञ्चकं सम्पूर्णम्।
Thank you, Jai Gurudev.